We're live. It's week 15. The fantasy playoffs are officially here. It's go time. It's go time. There's no going back now. There's no going back now. And if you're tuning into this show in week 15, it means you made it. You made it into the tournament. And that's goal number one. We just got to get in. Because at this point, once you're in the tournament, it's wide open. Everybody has a chance. Once you're in, you get a chance. So we're going to continue to do what we've done over the last few weeks. We're already halfway through our 6-week journey to fantasy greatness. 3 more weeks to go. The championship time, baby. So today's show, we're going to predict the league winners of 2024 who are going to go off over the next 3 weeks and be the reason why people win championships. I'm going to give you a handful of candidates at each position. And then we're going to talk about who we're going to stash, who we need to keep stashed on our bench for the fantasy playoffs. Contingent upside. That's contingent upside. I talk about that every week. We need to take advantage of contingent upside. We saw that play out last week. Believe me, we're going to talk about that a little later. And then we're also going to talk about week 15 specifically, some sleepers and some streamers, some guys you can find on your waiver wire, off your bench that maybe can give you an opportunity in deeper leagues if you have some injuries. You know, you got the flex spot you got to fill. We got some guys. We got some guys at every position that maybe you can plug in a desperate situation in week 15. So if you're ready, sit back, strap up. Let's go on a title run. Predicting this year's league winners. We're going to give you a couple of options to each position. Who are the guys who over the next 3 weeks are going to be the reason why some teams in fantasy football win championships? We see it every year. There's always a handful of players that if you didn't have one of those guys on your rosters, you probably didn't win your title. There could be multiple of them. We're going to go through them today. We're going to start at the quarterback position. I'm going to predict Baker Mayfield is going to be on a lot of league-winning rosters. He's having the best season of his career. He's QB5 in fantasy points per game. He's number 4 in passing yards. He's 3rd in passing touchdowns. This is Baker Mayfield. I think the Browns are having some regrets right now. He's also 3rd in completion percentage. And looking ahead, the Bucs schedule, week 15. They get the Chargers. Not the easiest matchup, but that could turn into a shootout. There could be a lot of points scored in that game. The Cowboys in week 16, they're the 4th easiest matchup for quarterbacks from a fantasy football perspective. And the Panthers in the fantasy championship week, they present the 5th easiest matchup for the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield, he's been hot. His defense is bad, which means he has to drop back and throw the ball a bunch of times a game. It's on him. The weight, the team, the offense is on Baker Mayfield's shoulders. He is going to carry them to the playoffs. And he's going to carry our fantasy teams to championships. I also think Bo Nix has a chance to be a league winner over the next 3 weeks. He's in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I know that the season kind of started rough for him. You know, it was all, check downs, low ADOT. He relied on scrambling. But now, over the last 6 weeks or so, Bo Nix is throwing the ball down the field. And he's throwing the ball down the field with the best of them. He's 4th in completions of 10-plus air yards. He's 3rd in total air yards. And he's number 1 on the season in deep ball attempts. And he's still getting it done with his legs. He's run for over 300 yards, and he's got 4 rushing touchdowns. He's the QB8 in fantasy points per game. A lot of people, including myself, were very skeptical on Bo Nix coming out of Oregon last year, coming into the NFL. The last quarterback picked in the first round of the draft this year. Were the Broncos fools? Were they reaching Apparently not. They got their guy. They've got their guy. Looking ahead over the next 3 weeks, the Broncos get the Colts in week 15. That's the 12th easiest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. Then we get the Chargers. That game could turn into a shootout. A lot of points could be scored in that game. The Chargers offense is hot. The Broncos offense is hot. And then in the fantasy championship week, week 17, it's the Bengals. They are the 3rd easiest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. You talk about shootouts. That game, I guarantee that game is going to be a shootout. I don't know what the betting line is going to be for that week, but smash the over on that game. These offenses are going to score a lot of points in that game. And I also got a dark horse at quarterback. You're going to laugh at me, especially after last week. But stick with me here. Will Levis. Will Levis could, and I know most people aren't going to start, and I'm not going to recommend starting Will Levis, but in deeper leagues, in super flex formats, I would consider Will Levis over the next 3 weeks. Week 15 is the Bengals, who are 3rd easiest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. We just talked about them. They generate shootouts. Even the Titans, even Will Levis can score some points against the Bengals. That's the Colts in week 16. The Jaguars are the number 1 easiest matchup for the quarterback position. Get them in the fantasy championship game. I know. He just played the Jaguars in week 14. Fell on his face. I understand that. I do. I understand it. Second time's a charm. Second time's a charm. But here's my thing. If any quarterback can go on a Jameis Winston-like run, get hot, run pure, with touchdowns, big plays down the field, it's Will Levis. He's got the weapons. He's got the arm. He wants to make plays. He's so much like Jameis Winston. He really is. His play style is Jameis Winston-like, just living on the edge, chucking it deep, throwing balls he shouldn't be throwing, which turns into a lot of mistakes. I get that. But what happens if he just runs pure? Just hear me out. Will Levis. Could happen. Let's get to running backs. League-winning running back candidates. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the obvious guys. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. I'm not going to talk about Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. We're not going to give you those guys. We're going a little bit deeper. How about Tony Pollard? I think Tony Pollard could be a league winner at the running back position. He's going to be on a lot of championship rosters at the end of the season. He's getting all the touches in that backfield right now. He out-touched Tajay Spears 23-7 in week 14. He's 6th in opportunity share, 6th in targets, 9th in carries. He's also top 10 in rushing yards and receptions. He's a full-blown bell cow, dual threat running back in that backfield. He's got 10 carries of 15 or more yards, which is 7th among all running backs. He's an explosive player. That the explosiveness that we weren't getting from him last year in Dallas, coming off that broken leg at the end of the previous season, it's back. It's back for Tony Pollard. He's explosive again, and we're seeing it even in the Titans offense. He's reached 20-plus opportunities, carries plus targets in 9 of 13 games. And he just ran for over 102 yards in week 14. He's been over 100 in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Look at the Titans schedule, week 15. It's the Bengals. They're pretty decent against fantasy running backs, but it's a vulnerable defense. You can't deny it's a vulnerable defense. We just saw that with Rico Dowdle last week. Tony Pollard can do that. Week 16, it's the Colts, who are the 5th easiest matchup for the running back position, and the Jaguars in the fantasy championship. Ride Tony Pollard to a title. Start him with confidence. He could be a league winner. Chuba Hubbard wheels up all the way up for Chuba Hubbard. He's got the new contract. Jonathan Brooks out for the year, RIP. And with Brooks going down in week 14, Chuba Hubbard played 97% of the snaps. He's a full-blown bell cow. And all in the season, he's 7th in opportunity share. He's 7th in carries. He's 9th in targets. And in week 14, according to PFF, he forced 6 missed tackles. He's a machine. Chuba Hubbard is a machine. He is the Panthers' offense. Just reached 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. He's 6th in rushing yards in the league. He's top 10 in total touchdowns. He's top 5 in runs of 15 yards or more with 12. He's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. He's a top 15 running back in fantasy football. And the Panthers offense is playing so much better, which can only be a good thing for Chuba Hubbard. Bryce Young being better, the offense being better is good for Chuba. Looking at the schedule, it's the Cowboys in week 15, easy matchup. Cardinals, week 16, easy matchup. And then it's the Buccaneers who give up points in buckets. In the fantasy championship week, ride Chuba Hubbard to your championship. I got a few honorable mentions real quick. Isaac Guerrero, if it wasn't for the foot injury, he would have made this list. He would have been one of the top guys I talked about, as would have been Bucky Irving. If it wasn't for whatever's going on with his back, his hip, I already had him penciled in. Coming into last week, I knew I was going to do this episode. I already had Bucky Irving penciled in. If he ends up getting healthy, gets on the field, even for 2 of these weeks, Bucky Irving could be a league winner if he assumes the role that he's been in. And we also got Josh Jacobs and Chase Brown. These guys are getting heavy workloads. They're peaking at the right time in the season. Schedules are decent. I know Chase Brown has a couple of tough matchups, but the Bengals offense is playing so well. Chase Brown is playing so well. He's not sharing the backfield with anybody. Could be Chase Brown's season over the next 3 weeks. I want to give you a dark horse running back who could be a league winner, and that is Kamani Vidal. Kamani Vidal of the Chargers, the rookie running back. He just outstepped Gus Edwards 53% to 43% in week 14. He's got so much more juice than Gus Edwards. He's a big, explosive running back, and he adds value in the passing game where Gus Edwards and Hassan Haskins don't. Remember, I don't know what week it was, like week 6 or so. It was like Kamani Vidal's NFL debut. They ran him, it's just the first quarter or something. They ran him on a wheel route up the sideline. He caught like a 30-yard ball for a touchdown down the sideline. Kamani Vidal can do that. He can do that. I got to get used to saying his name as Vidal. Whole offseason, I was calling him Kamani Vidal. Vidal. Whatever. I don't know what it is anymore. It's Vidal. So J.K. Dobbins likely out for the duration of the playoffs. Maybe he's back week 17, probably more like week 18 or the start of the playoffs. The schedule over the next few weeks: Buccaneers in week 15, Broncos in week 16, and it's the Patriots who are super vulnerable to the run in the fantasy championship week. Fire up Kamani Vidal. He could be your dark horse league winner. At wide receiver, Jawan Jennings, league winner. Just, you don't even have to pencil this one in. Put it in permanent marker. Jawan Jennings, league winner. He's the real number one wide receiver in San Francisco. It's not Deebo Samuel. Let me tell you that. 4 games with Brock Purdy and since the Brandon Ayuk injury. 7 catches for 93 yards. He was the wide receiver 15. 10 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. He was wide receiver 7. Then we had the snow game. It was 3 catches for 56 yards. Wide receiver 53. Whatever. You can throw that one away. Then he comes back with 7 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. Is the wide receiver 5 in week 14. Not to mention that huge game that he had earlier in the season. 11 catches, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 1 overall on the week. He can do that. He's got that upside. Week 14, we saw a 30% target share. He had 32% of the air yards, 3rd of the first read targets, according to Fantasy Points data. And Jennings out-targeted the rest of the 49ers wide receivers. He had 8 targets. The rest of the wide receivers on that team had 5. Clear number 1. Clear number 1 wide receiver there. It's George Kittle. It's Jawan Jennings. Where is Deebo? Nobody knows. He's on Twitter. He's a wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game. He's number 5 in yards per route. Jawan Jennings is number 15 in explosive plays. He's on pace for a 1,000-yard season for the first time in his career. He has a 32% target share over the last month. Only Puka Nacua has a higher target share among wide receivers. Look at the schedule. It's the Rams week 15, the Dolphins in week 16, and it's the Lions in week 17. Those could all be shootout games. And looking at the Rams game, That's the team that he torched for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 15. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I also think Courtland Sutton could be a league winner at the wide receiver position. He's been dominant since his 0 catch, 0 target game back in week 7. Since then, he's averaged 9.5 targets per game, 7 receptions per game, 91 receiving yards per game, including 3 100-yard performances from Courtland Sutton. And according to the Fox broadcast the other night, since week 8, Courtland Sutton and Bo Nix, they've led the NFL in quarterback wide receiver combination completions, more than Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, more than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Courtland Sutton is 7th in targets on the year, 2nd in air yards, 5th in deep targets. He's 4th in red zone targets, so he's going to get some touchdowns over the next few weeks. Look at the schedule. It's the Colts, Chargers, and the Bengals. Wide receivers destroy the Bengals. Fire up Courtland Sutton. He could be a league winner. Honorable mention, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Jackson Smith-Njigba. I couldn't choose. I couldn't just stick with 2 guys. I got to give you a quick. Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's 5th in receiving yards, 9th in targets, 6th in receptions and yards after the catch. So he's getting it done in all areas of the game. And he hasn't had fewer than 11.9 fantasy points since all the way back in week 7. Jackson Smith-Njigba on his way to being a league winner. He's got 3 rush attempts since week 10 as well. So they're trying to get the ball to him in new ways. You love to see when an offense recognizes, we got a playmaker in that guy right there. Let's get him the ball in more ways. Let's get him the football. Let's get him involved in this offense. Look at the schedule. It's the Packers, Vikings, Bears. Those could all turn out to be shootouts. They could. It's not the easiest schedule, but it's not the hardest. Jackson Smith-Njigba, league winner potential. As is Adam Thielen. I got to give you another one. Adam Thielen. He's averaged 21.6 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks, combined for 21 targets between week 13 and week 14, 28% target share over that span, 17 receptions, averaging over 100 yards per game over the last 2 weeks. He's the clear number 1 go-to target for Bryce Young, who, as we mentioned earlier, is playing good football right now. No target competition in that offense. The schedule is the Cowboys, Cardinals, and the Buccaneers. And how about a dark horse candidate? 2 dark horse candidates. How about Rome Odunze? Dark horse candidate to be a league winner this year. Coming off a 2-touchdown game in week 14. He leads the team with 12 end zone targets, so he's probably getting a couple more touchdowns over the next couple of weeks. He's averaging 8 targets per game over the last 4 games, which is since the Shane Waldron firing. That includes 2 10-target games. Looking at the schedule, it's the Vikings who give up the most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, the Lions who give up the 7th most, and it's the Seahawks in week 17. He could be a league winner if anything happens to either DJ Moore or Keenan Allen. Just keep it in mind. Rome Odunze. Don't forget it. And the other dark horse candidate is Jacoby Myers. He's quietly the wide receiver 21 in fantasy points per game right now. He scored at least 13 PPR points in 7 of 9 games. Since Devontae Adams has either been out of the lineup or traded away, he's had at least 10 targets in 6 of his last 8 games, including each of the last 3 consecutive games with more than 10 targets for Jacoby Myers. He's averaging more fantasy points per game than Marvin Harrison Jr. He's averaging more than Tyreek Hill, George Pickens, Zay Flowers, Ladd McConkey, and I got that from Player Profiler. And his upcoming schedule is the Falcons, Jaguars, and Saints. Beautiful schedule. Jacoby Myers could be a league winner down the stretch. He's going to be on a lot of championship rosters when it's all said and done with. Moving on to tight end, it's Trey McBride. I don't need to tell you about Trey McBride, but I'm going to tell you about Trey McBride anyway. He's already a top 3 tight end in fantasy football. And that's despite still to this day, still has not caught a touchdown all season long. What is he up to? Over 80 catches at this point. Still no touchdowns for Trey McBride. I know he recovered a fumble at one point, but that doesn't count for us. No touchdown catches for Trey McBride. Looking at the schedule, it's the Patriots in week 15, the Panthers in week 16, and the Rams in week 17. Trey McBride, what happens? What happens if he starts scoring touchdowns? What if the touchdown regression just hits so hard in a good way for Trey McBride over the next 3 weeks? He is going to absolutely break fantasy football. He's already scoring this many points without touchdowns. What happens if he has a 2-touchdown game in week 16 and he scores another touchdown in week 17? He's going to destroy fantasy football. He's going to be the reason why teams win a championship. You don't need me to tell you to start Trey McBride. I just want you to be excited with me about Trey McBride. We also need to be excited about David Njoku. Looking at his schedule. Week 15, it's the Chiefs. I know they got a good defense. However, they are susceptible to tight ends specifically. They're the 3rd easiest matchup for the tight end position. That's the Bengals with the 8th easiest matchup for the tight end position. And the Dolphins in week 17, they're the 10th easiest for tight ends. And Njoku, he's been thriving ever since Jameis Winston took over at quarterback. He's got 30 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks, not since Jameis took over. 2 weeks. David Njoku combined for 30 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He's going to be one of, if not the number 1 tight end in the fantasy playoffs. And when he saw the Bengals in week 7, he gets them again in the semifinals. When David Njoku played against the Bengals in week 7, he carved them up for 10 receptions, 76 yards, scored a touchdown, and he finished as the tight end 1 overall on the week. He'll see them again in the semifinals. He's going to see them again in the semifinals. And then I got a dark horse candidate. This one actually goes deep. A dark horse candidate for tight end league winner, and that is Jatavian Sanders in Carolina, the rookie. He was playing well before he hurt his neck. Came back last week, was kind of, eased back into the offense. Bryce Young's playing well. He needs another option outside of Adam Thielen, and the schedule is good. It's the Cowboys, Cardinals, and the Buccaneers. But with that happened last weekend, what have I been telling you to do all season long? Stash handcuff running backs. I've been emphasizing it more and more the closer we get to the fantasy playoffs. I've essentially put my reputation on this strategy. Fill your bench with as many handcuff running backs as possible. Be proactive, not reactive. I promise you. Stick with me, and it will pay off. I promise you that, all right? Stick with me. It's going to pay off. Well, what happened? What happened in week 15? Week 14? Let's go. We just had to celebrate. We had to celebrate. It's happening. It's happening. If you stashed running backs, you stashed handcuff running backs, it paid off for you in such a huge way. We just needed a moment. But who else? Who's the next one? Who's the next one who could be that league winner? Could it be Ray Davis? He's a huge league winner if James Cook goes down. When James Cook missed week 6 versus the Jets, he took 20 carries, caught 3 passes, had 152 total yards, 18 fantasy points. You must stash Ray Davis. You also got a mustache. Blake Corum. If Kyron Williams, I couldn't think of his name. Kyron Williams goes down. Blake Corum becomes a full-blown bell cow in the Rams offense. He would assume the full Kyron Williams role. Tyler Algier. You got to stash Tyler Algier. He would be the bell cow in the case of a Bijan Robinson injury. He's got weekly top 12 running back upside. You got to stash Trey Benson if James Conner goes down. And James Conner is a ticking time bomb. He's never stayed healthy for a full season. He's on his way to do it. I can't believe it's going to happen. It might not happen. He's only played more than 13 games in his career one time. Well, he's at 13 games. What happens? He's never played more than 15. And in the case of a James Conner injury, Trey Benson would immediately slide in as the number one running back in Arizona. He's got weekly RB2 upside in fantasy football with the potential to be an RB1 at any point. You also got to stash Jalen Wright in case anything happens to Devon Achane, Damian Pierce in case anything happens to Joe Mixon, Kenneth Gainwell in case anything happens to Saquon Barkley. Now, I think there are two must-stash players beyond running backs. One is Rome Odunze. If anything happens to DJ Moore or Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze has league winner upside. The other, and this one's wild, this one's kind of off the map, is Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki is a must-stash because he's the T. Higgins handcuff. If you look at the splits, and I don't have them in front of me, I should have had them in my notes, but if you look at the splits in the games where T. Higgins is out, Mike Gesicki is a dominant playmaker. He scores a ton of fantasy points. He's a weekly starter. I think there was 1 week where he wasn't like a top 12 tight end that week in the games that Higgins was out. You got to stash Mike Gesicki or at least keep that on your radar in the case of a T. Higgins injury over the next few weeks. And T. Higgins, remember, he hasn't gotten paid. If the Bengals fall out of contention or if he gets a little nicked up where normally he'd push through it, he'd play through it, he might not do that at this point in the season with the record of the Bengals where they're sitting right now and his contract situation. He might not be willing to push through an injury that normally he would play through. So T. Higgins is a great danger of missing at least 1 or 2 weeks in the fantasy playoffs. And Mike Gesicki becomes a must start in that situation. Let's move on to week 15 streaming options. We'll start at quarterback. Caleb Williams against the Vikings. He's only 48% rostered. Despite the struggles, he's still QB 13 overall on the season. And prior to week 14, Caleb Williams, he had back-to-back top 5 weeks. He's averaging 35 pass attempts per game over the last 6. And he's averaging 42 rushing yards over the last 4. That's what's going to carry him from fantasy for fantasy purposes. We've seen that with Drake May, where he doesn't have the weapons, not getting a ton of passing production, but he's running the ball a ton. He's usable. He's a top 12 quarterback in a lot of weeks. We could get that from Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams has much better weapons than a Drake May. And look at the matchup this week against the Vikings. They just played them in week 12. He had 340 yards passing in that game. He threw 2 touchdowns. He ran for 33 yards against the Vikings in week 12. He was the QB4 overall. So we've already seen him in recent weeks against the Vikings just 3 weeks ago. He can do that. You can stream Caleb Williams if you need a quarterback streamer. We can also stream Will Levis against the Bengals. He's 28% rostered. He's got Jameis Winston-like tendencies at times. He's Jameis Winston light. He's got Calvin Ridley and Nick Westbrook-Ikine. Those guys are playing really well. Ridley is commanding targets at a high level. Up until week 14, Nick Westbrook-Ikine had been as hot as any wide receiver in football, just scoring touchdowns at an insane rate. He could pick that back up. Bengals are the 3rd easiest matchup for quarterbacks, and the game script is going to play in his favor. Unlike last week against the Jaguars, against a bad Jaguars team, against Mac Jones, game script, he's going to play from behind. The Bengals are probably going to blow out the Titans in this week, so he's going to have to play from behind, throw the ball a lot more. dial up some of those Jameis Winston-like plays. So you can, in deep formats, in a desperate situation, you could play Will Levis in Week 15. At running back, we're looking at Patrick Taylor. Patrick Taylor plays on Thursday Night Football against the Rams. If Isaac Guerrero is out, Patrick Taylor is going to lead the San Francisco backfield. Then you got Keyshawn Vaughn, who's probably going to operate as the RB2. They did claim Israel Abanikanda off waivers a couple of weeks ago. He's probably going to be the RB3. He does have some potential, some upside, but I think it's probably too little too late for him to get incorporated into that offense in a significant role. He's probably just going to be the RB3. And of course, going to get Deebo Samuel mixed in there as well. But Taylor isn't quite as explosive as the 49ers running backs that came before him, but he could still get a decent workload in a quality offense that maximizes running back production no matter who is in there. And the Rams are kind of like middle of the pack against running backs. They just gave up a ton of points to the Bills. Now, of course, not much of that came from the running back position, but their defense is susceptible to scoring points against. That could happen for the 49ers as well. And maybe it favors the running back position more than it did for Buffalo. And that defense is going to be tired on a short week. After giving up 42 points to the Bills, just an absolute track meet, running back and forth up and down the field for an entire game like that. It was an intense game. Only having 3 days rest, the Rams defense is still going to be tired. They're still going to be tired. We get to the fourth quarter and the Rams have, a 6-point lead. They start to run the ball. I don't know if the Rams are going to be able to, hold up for an entire 60-minute football game. They're getting beat up by Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle in the blocking game. We could get a nice fourth quarter from Patrick Taylor. Now, I don't expect we're going to get, the 20-plus point performances that we got from Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerrero, but Patrick Taylor should be good for probably about 10 to 15 points against the Rams on Thursday Night Football. I also like it. Let's go deeper. How about Chris Rodriguez against the Saints? But I get it. But I know there are people in desperate situations right now. He rushed 13 times for 94 yards and a touchdown in Week 13 before the bye week. That could be a sign that he has supplanted Jeremy McNichols as the number 2 running back in that backfield. We know Austin Eckler is on IR, so Austin Eckler is not going to be available to play. So if Brian Robinson's still dealing with hamstring injuries, still dealing with an ankle injury, we're going to get somebody else in that backfield worked in for some meaningful touches. That could be Chris Rodriguez. He also had a game earlier in the year where he ran 11 times for 52 yards. He was efficient. And we got a Week 15 matchup against the Saints. It's the 12th easiest matchup for the running back position. And the Commanders should lead big in this game, which means more rushing production, garbage time points, second half points for the running game, for that offense, and maybe, just maybe, for Chris Rodriguez. He's a desperation play in deeper leagues only, but you can pick him up. Isaiah Davis, not quite as deep, but a guy you can pick up off your waiver wire. He's got a matchup with the Jaguars this week. With Breece Hall out in Week 14, the Jets' backfield is split pretty 50-50. Braylon Allen played 54% of the snaps. Isaiah Davis played about 53% of the snaps. In the passing game, Isaiah Davis saw 6 targets and a 15% target share. Braylon Allen had 5 targets. And Isaiah Davis, he rushed 10 times for 40 yards and a touchdown. He also caught 3 of his 6 targets for 27 yards. The matchup this week against the Jaguars are the second easiest matchup for the running back position. And if Breece Hall is out again, Isaiah Davis is a solid deep league streamer. You can even stream him in some shallower leagues as well. He's a very, very legitimate pick up and put in your lineup type player for Week 15. Moving on to wide receiver, Adam Thielen against the Cowboys. He averaged 21 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks, combined for 21 targets over the last 2 games. Comes out to about a 29% target share, 17 receptions, 101 yards per game over the last 2 weeks. He's the clear number one go-to target for Bryce Young. And he's playing with fresh legs, fresh body. He missed a chunk of the middle of the season. He's not beat up. He's not an old 35-year-old. He's playing fresh. He's playing good. And it's showing on the field. No target competition in that offense. In the Cowboys, they are the 11th easiest matchup for the wide receiver position. You can fire up. You can trust Adam Thielen. Not just in Week 15. He could be that league winner. Josh Palmer against the Buccaneers in Week 15. Last week without Ladd McConkey, he had a season-high 6 catches for 78 yards on 9 targets. He ran 94% of the routes. He had a 26% target rate and a 32% target share. You can play him whether or not Ladd McConkey is in or out of that game. Against the Buccaneers, this could be a shootout game. The Bucs offense is playing well. Baker Mayfield's playing well. The defense, the secondary, not so much. They're very susceptible, especially to the pass. They're actually the 7th easiest matchup for the wide receiver position. You can find Josh Palmer on your waiver wire or on your bench. Fire him up, stream him if you need a wide receiver play in Week 15. Moving on to tight end. Grant Calcaterra against the Steelers. He's only 4% roster. Dallas Goedert still on IR. Week 14, with Goddard out, Grant Calcaterra caught 3 of his 3 targets, 16 yards, but he scored his first career touchdown. And earlier this season, when Dallas Goedert was out, he had a game with 4 catches for 67 yards against the Browns. He had a game with 3 catches, 58 yards against the Bengals. And he had a game of 5 catches for 30 yards against the Jaguars. Grant Calcaterra is the legitimate streaming option in Week 15 and moving forward for as long as Dallas Goedert is out. How about Stone Smart? Let's go real deep. Let's go real deep with Stone Smart against the Buccaneers. Nobody's rostering Stone Smart. But if Ladd McConkey's out again and Will Dissly is out again as well, or he went out at the end of last week's game. He actually missed the second half. Smart can be a sneaky, fun streamer in Week 15. Last week, after Dissly went down, so it's the entire second half, Stone Smart was the number 1 tight end. He got 3 passes for 54 yards. That's not a bad stat line for half a game of football. He's an exceptional athlete who can take advantage of a vulnerable Buccaneers defense. The Bucs have allowed a tight end to score at least 12 fantasy points in 6 of the last 7 games. Last week against the Buccaneers, they gave up Raiders tight ends, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. They combined for 10 catches, 117 yards against this Buccaneers defense. And before that, it was Tommy Tremble in Week 13. He got 5 passes for 77 yards. That's an obscure tight end, just like Stone Smart. So we know a guy like that can step into a lineup and score fantasy points and be part of why you win in Week 15. Deep play, but you can pick up Stone Smart. All right, let's see if we got a few questions in the chat before we get out of here. All right, how about Juwan Jennings, JSN, Rico Dowdle, Mike Evans, Drake London, Patrick Taylor. Please start 2 of these guys. I think we got to go Evans, right? And then it's like, who the hell do we play between Jackson, Smith and Jigba, Juwan Jennings, and Drake London? So we're going to go Mike Evans. And I think we got to go Juwan Jennings. How about from Keith? Keith is asking 10-team PPR, Khalil Shakir, Jalen Waddle. Which one of these guys? We're already starting Tyreek Hill and Achane. I think we got to go Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir is hot right now, man. He's hot. That offense is hot. Josh Allen is hot. We got to roll with Khalil Shakir. How about from KJ? Win or go home. Start 3. Cooper Kupp, Juwan Jennings, Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, or Adam Thielen. Full PPR. Need a lot of points this week to win. So looking for maximum upside. That's got to be Cooper Kupp Juwan Jennings, and Mike Evans. Unfortunately, I think we got to sit Garrett Wilson and Adam Thielen. I think the first three in that question are the play. They're going to give you maximum upside, maximum floor as well. Thoughts on Coleman? He's cleared and don't have a good flex. Or should I trust Jaden Reed? Why, oh, why can I not think of who the hell Coleman is? What is wrong with me? Who's Coleman? It's going to hit me, and I'm going to be like, why didn't I know that? I don't know. I don't know if we can trust Jaden Reed right now, though. They're not throwing the ball a lot in Green Bay. It's coming off a 0-target game, and if you look at the previous 3 or 4 games prior to that 0 game, it wasn't looking good for Jaden Reed. I love Jaden Reed. He can go boom at any moment. He's hard to sit. Trust? Probably not. I don't know who Coleman is. I'm sure I do, but Tyler never helps me out with first names, so who knows who that is? Keon Coleman. All right, it's because he's been out for a few weeks. I would play Jaden Reed over Keon Coleman for sure. Definitely play Jaden Reed over Keon Coleman. Drake London or Juwan Jennings or T. Higgins. Ooh, I think we got to go Juwan Jennings. I really do. These are all great plays. I want to play them all. But if I had to choose, I think we got to go Juwan Jennings. I really, really do. He's just in the best situation right now. He's playing so good. All right. I think that's all our questions. That's our show. What a great show. This was fun. We had a party. Celebrated. We got a lot done. I'll be back Saturday. Sleepers and streamers with my co-host Sam. We'll get you ready for week 15. And of course, we got the Start Sit show on Sunday morning. Same as every week. I'll see you then.